I wanted to share with you some information and introduction about the VISConti and UPPScience Community of Practice. Actually, the story starts in 2009 when we had a Comenius network at the time, and it was one of the results was that there was the wish and the ambition for a SEEP network to become more of a community of practice. At the time it was a new concept to us, but then in 2004 we started up the VISConti Project, which was an Erasmus Plus project for vocational education, and the ambitions of VISConti were reached when it formed a community of practice, and it created tools to bring some innovation into vocational education, especially related to STEM and IT. Then the UPPScience project came along. It was also an Erasmus Plus project, and the idea behind the UPPScience was to make the community of practice that was started in VISConti, to make it bigger, to create more tools, and to bring in a high element of research. The population is basically made of teachers, students, and some professionals from industry. This development from a network into a community of practice was a major step forward in the maturity of our community. Whereas in a network, people go into the network sometimes by just registering a profile for a user account, or sometimes it is just ticking join a Facebook group. In a community of practice, you have to ask to join the community of practice, or you are invited to join. And being accepted or being requested to join depends on your professional profile and your professional interests. In VISConti, the profiles were more around the subjects of STEM and IT, whereas now in UPPScience the profiles are a bit wider, because the focus is in bringing people who are not usually engaged in research into research. You join SCOP if you want to grow professionally, if you want to share ideas, if you want to receive training, if you want to get into new areas that usually you do not get into in your normal course of work. For example, in VISConti, the community of practice created tools for a new way of validating projects and sharing of ideas and validating them on the basis of technical viability, if a project idea is possible technically, if it has economic potential and how and in what context, and a bit of measuring of creativity. Let's call it making creativity more of a discipline rather than a vague concept. In UPPScience, members of the community of practice are being trained into how to research and how to write to be published. The thing is, in generic terms, one thinks this is easy, but members are discovering how much we need oiling, how much we need training to get into research. Communities of practice actually started in medicine quite a number of years ago, when specialists and surgeons were forming communities so that they could share information and ask questions to each other about unique cases in their practice. This history has given communities of practice three characteristics that are very important to understand before joining a community of practice. One is that a community of practice has a mission. It is not a general networking, again. In our case, the community of practice that was started in VISConti and now is in UPPScience is to bring innovation in education. We have started with the first step in the sharing of ideas and validation with peer reviewing. In UPPScience, we started up the process of engaging people who are not usually engaged in research activities and publishing of mini papers to make it reachable and accessible. We also have future plans to increase the number of activities and the number of tools that help practitioners in STEM and IT and related humanities subjects to bring innovation in the profession and their respective profession, especially in education. A second characteristic of a community of practice is that members have a common repertoire, that they talk about the same things, about the same subject. So usually in a community of practice, you will not find many strands of discussion. They are quite specific. This is why earlier I said that activities are more structured in a community of practice. Third is that members in a community of practice have a commitment. There's a mutual engagement where you join a community of practice to be active. It is not, as we said earlier, that like in a network you go idle. Actually, the tools we have created in the community of practice of VISConti and UPPScience, and this will continue in future activities in this community of practice, there are some activities where you are solicited to take part, and there is a commitment that you do. For example, when you are invited to peer review a paper by another member, you are making a commitment that you make that review and that you do it well. When you are invited to make a peer review of a project or a creative idea, you have a commitment that you make that validation. This is because there is mutual benefit for the person who is sharing an idea, who is publishing research, and also for yourself, because by carrying out these activities, you are also upping your professional profile. And this is, after all, why you have joined this community. Well, of course, one can easily ask, why should I join this community of practice? And I must admit I do not have a specific answer for that, because every member in a community of practice has a personal ambition, has a personal interest. And the idea of a community of practice that you learn from others, you learn with others for your own selfish reasons as well. The thing is, the community of practice is an investment in yourself, professionally and personally as well. Today, in a world of social media where engagement is very fluid and very, at times, frivolous and shallow, we have tended to forget some basic tools that we used to use for our professional development. Reading, writing, thinking. The community of practice of the VISConti and UPPScience is an opportunity to start these processes again. When we started the training in 2018 in research, teachers were discovering participants were even a bit stressed when they found themselves struggling with going back to reading, with going back to exploring concepts, because usually our profession does not give us the luxury of the time to do this. If anything, if you have to join the community of practice, join it for this reason, so that you have time and the luxury to invest some time in yourself so that you grow personally and at professional level as well. When we say that you engage in research, this might sound a bit intimidating, because we often have the concepts in our mind that research belongs to academics, and we feel we are not academics. Well, we opened up doors in the community of practice. We are, for example, requesting research in the form of mini papers. We're talking 3,000 words. The idea of making this research more open and more accessible is to show that with some small commitment, you can start small steps towards improving yourself. It is the process that is important, not that you produce an academic paper. Of course, we are aiming at quality, and that is why we established two tools for this. One is a template that helps you publish your mini paper in a certain form, with references, with literature review. Also, you cannot publish a paper without the peer review of two other members. This means that you can get input about how you can improve your paper. There is a lot of background work going on in a community of practice. Some of this work is never maybe conceived by members or by people who have never been in a community like this. Basically, there are three areas of background work. One is populating the community with numbers, because without numbers you cannot have three-dimensional exchange. The more variety, that is another area of background work to animate, to populate the community of practice. The more variety of interests, the more three-dimensional the discussions and the exchange can be. And then quality members. Quality is in the professional profile and in the commitment during the life of the community of practice. There is background work to animate the community of practice. Members lose interest if the community of practice goes silent for a number of months. So this is why we started in VISConti with project validation activities, then we went to UPPScience with research, and we have new plans in increasing new tools and also making the population of the community wider to have even more variety of interests in it. Activities can be virtual in the community or else even face-to-face. For example, in VISConti and in UPPScience we had face-to-face training to help the members understand their role and understand how they can benefit from the use of the tools that the platform that we created can help them perform. Background work is also in augmentation. Augmentation of the population, augmentation of the tools, and augmentation of new avenues to make the community of practice live and grow, both in population and in maturity. The community today has plans for the next 2 years, but we are already thinking of new concepts that will take us even beyond the year 2020.